Imagine entrusting your baby's body to a funeral home and discovering days later that the baby was not in a clinical setting, but sitting in a baby chair in a strange woman's living room. This is not a horror movie scene. That's what some families in Leeds, England, said they experienced with Amie Upton, a 38-year-old funeral director and founder of the service called Florey's Army. The case gained notoriety after a BBC investigation revealed disturbing details. Babies' bodies being kept in inadequate conditions in a common house alongside cats, dogs, and even televisions playing cartoons. Amie Upton was no stranger to the world of childhood grief. In 2017, after losing her stillborn daughter, she created Florey's Army, a volunteer service that promised to help grief-stricken parents. She offered photos, clothes, handprints, and free funeral arrangements. Many praised her as an angel, but behind her image as a caregiver, dark stories emerged. One such story was told by Zoe Ward. In 2021, her baby, Bleu, died at just 3 weeks old after suffering brain damage. Trusting the good recommendations, Zoe handed Blue's body over to Florey's Army. But when she went to visit the next day, the scene left her in shock. In Mrs. Upton's living room, Blue was dressed and placed in a baby seat beside her, while the television played PJ Masks. There were toys, cat scratches, a dog barking in the background, and on the couch, the body of another baby. Zoe said she yelled into the phone to her mother, "It's dirty! He can't stay here!" He soon arranged for another funeral home to remove Bleu from that house. And it wasn't an isolated case. Another couple, Sharon and Paul, lost their stillborn daughter in 2023. They believed the body would be kept in a professional funeral home in Headingley, but discovered that he was actually at Upton's house without their consent. Sharon described the smell of the decomposing body and said her daughter did not appear to have been kept at an adequate temperature. The BBC understands that Amie had a cold crib with cooling pads, but evidence suggests it was not always used. This raises a terrible question. How many babies' bodies spent days in inadequate conditions, far from the clinical environment promised to families? Leeds Teaching Hospitals Trust confirmed it banned Amie Upton from NHS morgues and maternity wards. But how did she manage to retrieve bodies? The investigation showed that some were signed by licensed funeral homes, such as Gallagher Funeral Services, which had a working relationship with her. In other words, there was a web of trust that allowed parents to believe they were dealing with regulated services, when in fact there was no regulation at all. And here comes an even more disturbing point. The funeral industry in England and Wales is unregulated. There are no legal requirements for opening a funeral home, nor are there strict rules about how or where to keep bodies. Anyone, in theory, can print business cards and call themselves a funeral director. Amie Upton has never been part of official associations like NAFD or SAYIF, which carry out regular inspections. This means that for years she operated without oversight, handling the most sensitive memories of grieving parents, alone in her home. Despite the allegations, Upton defends herself. She claims that in 8 years of work, she has received only 2 complaints and that hundreds of families praise her. In fact, on their social media, there are dozens of messages calling their service inspiring and incredible. For some, it was a genuine support in their grief. For others, it was a nightmare. And this duality is perhaps the most disturbing point of the story. How can a woman, marked by her own tragedy, be seen as both a savior and a villain? Was he trying to humanize the death of babies, transforming the cold of the mortuary chambers into a temporary home? Or did it simply overstep ethical and psychological boundaries, ignoring the dignity of bodies and the trust of families? Sharon, speaking about her daughter being held at Upton's house, summed it up. "If I told this story to anyone, they would think it was a horror movie. The Leeds Trust said it had previously received several concerns about Upton and had since implemented extra measures to monitor her in morgues. But it wasn't officially banned until 2023. By then, dozens of bodies had passed through its hands. West Yorkshire Police investigated 2 reports but concluded that no potential criminal offence was identified. This exposes another flaw. In an unregulated industry, what is considered a crime? The law does not provide clear punishment for those who keep bodies in domestic environments, even if they are unsuitable. The case raised national discussions. Experts say the UK urgently needs tough regulations, as is already the case in Scotland. There, since 2022, funeral homes must comply with legal standards for hygiene, refrigeration, and inspection. In England, none of these exist. The government, under pressure from the repercussions, promised to evaluate measures to ensure that the highest standards are always met. But for the families who experience this trauma, the promise feels too late. The story touches deep wounds of the soul. Childhood grief is one of the most devastating pains a human being can face. Pais entregam o corpo de seus filhos a terceiros com uma confiança absoluta, esperando respeito, dignidade e profissionalismo. When that trust is betrayed, the trauma multiplies. The case of Amie Upton makes us reflect on the limits of empathy and insanity. Was she a woman broken by grief, trying to transform her own pain into a misunderstood service? Or an irresponsible professional who, under the guise of compassion, imposed disturbing images on parents that they will never forget? In the end, what remains is a cruel question. What does it mean to treat a body with dignity? Is it just a matter of temperature and hygiene, or also of symbolism, respect, and emotional distance? Whatever the answer, for Zoe, Sharon, and Paul, the scar is permanent. What should have been a moment of intimate and respectful farewell turned into a trauma with scenes worthy of a nightmare. And Amie Upton's story joins so many others already told here, revealing how human trust can be exploited even in the most vulnerable moments. Because in the end, when death comes, what we all hope for is respect. And when even that is taken away from us, grief turns into something even darker. Leave your like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more Fragments of the Mind, where we reveal what many prefer to ignore.